Hi, today we're going to talk about the skeletal system. If you remember, the skeletal system is actually part or considered as part of your connective tissues, right? And in terms of the skeletal system, it's important to know what are the types of cells that make up the bones, that make up the skeletal system. So first, we have basically four types of cells that make up your bone. The first one is called the osteoprogenital cell. So the osteoprogenital cell is essentially a stem cell. Okay, so this osteoprogenital cell is a stem cell, and these are the cells that are involved when there is a fracture of the bone, responsible for healing of a fracture of a bone. On the other hand, eventually the osteoprogenital cell becomes your osteoblasts. Osteoblast cells are the immature bone cells. Now essentially these immature bone cells are responsible for the manufacture or the production of your bone matrix. The third type of cell is what we call the osteocyte. Osteocyte is the mature bone cell. And these cells are responsible for monitoring your bone matrix. And finally, the fourth type of cell is called the osteoclast. Now, what do the osteoclasts do? They're important for bone breakdown, or what we call osteolysis. Okay? So bone breakdown or osteolysis. Okay? Now, it's also important that in the skeletal system, we can actually classify or divide the bones in the skeletal system as either appendicular skeleton, okay, or the axial skeleton. The axial skeleton, as the word axis or axial mean, refers to the bones that are found in the midline. And what are these bones in the midline? It includes your skull, your rib cage, including your sternum, and most importantly what? The sternal, the vertebral column, or what we call the spinal column. Okay? It also includes a small bone here in front called the hyoid bone. So let's review. It includes the skull, the hyoid bone, the sternum together with the rib cage, and your vertebral column or the spinal column. That's your axial skeleton. On the other hand, what about your appendicular skeleton? The appendicular skeleton, spelled A-P-P-E-N-D-I-C-U-L-A-R, is made up of the bones of the upper limbs, as you can see here, and of course the lower limb bones. So let's show this. These are the lower limb bones. Okay, so these are the bones that make up the lower limbs. Okay, as you can clearly see here, the lower limb bones are the bones that make up the appendicular skeleton, plus of course their attachments to the body. In the case of the upper limb bones are attached via the pectoral girdle bones, or what we call the shoulder girdle bones, made up of the clavicle and the scapula. So what's the name of this bone here? Clavicle, also known as the collarbone. That's like the word collar. And the other bone is your what? Scapula, or the shoulder blade bone. Okay? Now, in the upper limbs, the first bone that you find in the arm is called the humerus. On the forearm, which is this part of your body, the forearm, is made up of two bones. The radius, which is in the area of the thumb, and the ulna, which is in the area of the little finger. So radius and ulna. In the case of the hand, you have 8 carpal bones, and you have 5 metacarpal bones, and of course you have 14 phalanges. Each finger has 3 proximal, middle, distal phalanges. For the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth finger. In the case of the first finger, the thumb, you only have 2, proximal and distal phalanges. Second to the fifth, proximal, middle, distal phalanges. 4 times 3 times 12 plus 2, you have a total of 14 phalanges in your hand. In the case of your lower limb, the biggest and longest, heaviest bone in the body is called the femur. This is called the patella or the kneecap. In the leg, you have 2 bones. A smaller bone called the fibula and the bigger bone called what? The tibia, which is the weight-bearing bone. You have tarsal bones, you have metatarsal bones, again, phalanges for the foot. Okay? So again, take note that the lower limb is attached to the body via the pelvic girdle or the pelvis. In the case of the pelvis, it's made up of essentially 3 bones. The one in front is called the pubic bone. The one on top would be the iliac bone, and of course the 4th bone would be considered your ischial bone or ischium. Okay, so we're going to talk about this later on as we study the pelvic bones. We will have an actual demonstration of these bones. Okay, so this is just a brief introduction, and we will just stop there, and we'll continue to talk about the other parts of the skeletal system. Okay.